What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you another build for Wasteland 3. Now this build, the Mechanist, is all about using shotguns and mechanical companions, using the mechanic skill, to just have a lot of fun. This build is primarily a support build because we're leaning on summoning of sorts, a lot of mechanical companions through our mechanic skill, and shotgun is more of a close range, and while it can do a lot of damage towards the end game, we're focusing less on that and more about using the mechanical companions as kind of the main component as a support class. But shotguns can do a lot of damage, and they are how I prefer to do this. But that said, the shotgun thing isn't like set in stone, so if you want to use something else, you can probably swap it out easy enough. So, with that in mind, jumping right into it, we're going to start with picking our character's background as it gives us bonuses. Now, Bookworm is kind of the default one because it gives us a 5% experience bonus. However, two others that I'd like to bring your attention to are Raider Hater, which will give us 10% bonus damage to humans. Humans are the most numerous enemy in the game, so this is a really big buff. The other one I would possibly recommend is Vicious Avenger, which gives us extra penetration, which means our attacks do more damage against armored targets. Now, personally, I prefer Raider Hater for this because we're not really using any of these other particular things on this character. But if you can't decide, Bookworm's pretty much your default option. But we're going to go with Raider Hater. Now, we're going to skip appearance because who cares about that for a build video? Our starting weapon is, of course, going to be the shotgun because that's what we're using. Now, that brings us to attributes. So, as I mentioned with my other build video, I don't personally like to do this, but just to be clear, if you want to level up very quickly, then max out Charisma first thing, and that'll give you a 30% experience bonus when it's maxed out, which will help you level up very quickly, especially if you took Bookworm as well, and then you can start dumping points into these other skills. Personally, I don't like to do that. I don't like the way it plays. I don't like the way it feels, but it is an option. Now, outside of that, what we're going to focus on is coordination, awareness, and intelligence. Intelligence gives us a bunch of crit damage, as well as for every 2 points we put in intelligence, we get a skill point. So that is a one-time bonus, meaning that despite whenever we put the points into intelligence, we'll get those extra skill points, but that is not a per level thing. You don't get extra skill points every level. You just get bonus skill points once each 2 points you put into intelligence. Awareness is our hit chance, our range damage, and extra perception. And then coordination is going to give us extra action points to move with, as well as extra max action points, as well as giving us status effect resistance. Now, personally, I like to max out intelligence first. That's just me. You could alternatively max out awareness first, but I recommend doing awareness or intelligence, then going for coordination, and then any points you have left drop into luck or speed. Speed helps you move around the battlefield faster, which can be useful, but luck will actually give us extra separate chances at crit chances. So lucky crits are a separate roll from regular crits. So if you don't crit on something, you'll then roll a lucky crit chance to maybe turn it into a crit anyway, but the lucky stuff usually does more damage anyway. And maxed out, it's actually quite a significant boost to your crit chances and stuff, and it's really good. So personally, between luck and speed, I prefer luck, but do you? So again, personally, I prefer to start by maxing out intelligence, which you can usually do at the character creation screen. You usually have enough points, especially if you take 1 point out of something, to then max something else out. Now, we're late game, so we're kind of making this character at level like 24, I think it defaults to. So we're able to do a bit more. But personally, I like to start by maxing out intelligence, then I put my points into awareness until it's maxed out, and then I jump up to coordination, max that out, and then I personally put points into luck, but I could see the merits behind going speed as well if you wanted to. Personally, I don't like charisma for the experience bonus, but again, just to mention it, that will give you extra experience and help you level faster. Some people really enjoy that gameplay. I personally don't. I feel it takes the challenge out of a game, but do you? I'm just mentioning that it is an option. And of course, we get an attribute point every level to spend. So, alternatively, if you get all of your experience bonuses from charisma and then you level up really fast, you could in theory have more attributes to spend. And over the course of the game, especially if you do everything the game has to offer, you will factually be a higher level that way. Again, I just don't personally enjoy doing that. Now, that brings us to our skills. So, we are going to start out by doing small arms. So, I don't like that it's under small arms, but shotguns are governed by the small arms perk, or skill line, that should say, that gives you the perks. So small arms, that's going to give us our shotgun hit chance, as well as giving us access to the shotgun perks. Now, in addition to that, we're going to pick up Mechanics. So Mechanics is going to give us damage to robots, vehicles, synths, that kind of thing, but more importantly, it's also going to give us a lot of combat stuff that I'm going to get into a little bit later, after we get out of this character creation portion of the video. I want to say that I'm going to focus on the combat specific skills for this and try to leave the role playing up to you. Now, factually, as you can see, we still have quite a few points to max out some other stuff, and that doesn't even include things like gear or skill books, which will also help you increase certain skills. So the rest of this stuff isn't as important, and I like to leave it open for, say doing something like adding some role play to the build. But for this build to be viable in combat, personally, all I've found that you really need is the small arms and the mechanics to make that happen. But if you want to add other stuff to it, absolutely go for it. It should still work out for you. But as a suggestion for that roleplay, I do find that nerd stuff actually complements it very well, because nerd stuff will let you hack enemy robots and stuff, and I find that that fits into the roleplay of the Mechanist very well. So just a suggestion on that one. You don't have to. Really all you need is the mechanics and the shotgun skill if you're going to do this, but I try to leave as many options as I can open for individual role playing, so there you go. Personally, just a suggestion, pick up nerd stuff. It's fun. All right, and that brings us to our perks. So the Mechanist is one of the few where in a general perk that everyone has access to is actually something I would deem almost mandatory, and that is the Deep Pockets. This is going to give us an extra quick slot, which is going to allow us to use more of those consumable robots that I mentioned earlier that we'll get into in a little bit. But very much so, you definitely want to pick up Deep Pockets for that extra slot. Now, from here, from the small arms tree, we want to pick up Shredder Shot. Inflict bleeding on anyone hit, but moreover, it will also do double damage to anyone who has taken armor damage. So very good. Plus, it costs 1 less AP than a normal shotgun round, which is really good. These next two are actually handgun perks, so we don't really need to mess with them any. Then we have Clear Cover. Shotgun's doing 100% damage versus cover. This will help tear down things like barricades and stuff, so pretty useful. I recommend getting it. It especially helps you tear down cover to expose enemies for other of your characters to attack and destroy. Draw is actually amazing. In combat, your first attack after reloading an empty weapon costs 0 action points. So if you run out, which happens a lot with shotguns, you can then reload and attack with that weapon at 0 AP cost. Amazing perk. You should absolutely get it. And then we have Devastation. So shotgun attacks will do 25% extra damage for every enemy hit by the same shot, which is fantastic. You can usually cluster enemies together by like 3 or 4 and basically double the damage you're doing with shotguns. And towards the end of the game, this will just absolutely one-shot some groups. And then we have Counteroffensive. Attacking a melee enemy on your turn after they hit you deals plus 50 damage. This one, I mean, take it if you want it. I wouldn't say it's mandatory, but it can be fun if you want it. Mechanics. So Mechanics is our other big skill, and the first one is Structural Weakness, which will give us bonus damage to robots as well as vehicles, which can be pretty useful, so, take it if you want it. I personally enjoy it, but I wouldn't say it's mandatory either. Then we have Handy. So this applies to our deployable combat robots that I mentioned earlier. We absolutely want to give this because this is going to give them extra 25% health and damage. So definitely need to pick that up. Then we have our Reinforced Plating. Repairing vehicles and robots also boosts the target's max health by 25% for 3 turns. Personally, I don't find this useful because even on the higher difficulties, enemies don't really have a chance to kill your robots if you're playing the right way, so I don't personally get a lot of use out of this, but I could see why someone might pick it up if they wanted to. And then lastly, we have Fortify. So Fortify, when you repair friendly vehicles, robots, and deployables, you get 5 armor for 3 turns, which can be pretty helpful. Again, get it if you want it, but it's not really mandatory. Personally, I would say the ones you definitely need to get are Deep Pockets, Shredder Shot, Clear Cover, Draw, Devastation, Structural Weakness, and Handy. So again, those are the ones I highly recommend you get. After that, everything else, pick up stuff that's complementary, stuff that you might have fun with some of the exploration skills, like have a blast with it. At level 24, you can still have 4 perks left that you could pick up if you wanted to. So just keep that in mind. I'm just covering the ones that I think are mandatory for the build to be useful. Okay, and that is going to bring us to the equipment section of the video. So let's talk armor. Now, in order to talk about armor, I want to mention that the mechanic skill gets a lot of love in terms of gear at the beginning of the game. Like, the main town you go to at the beginning of the game has so much stuff for mechanics and the Mechanist, I guess. It's kind of ridiculous. So there is a machine shop in town that you will go to as part of a quest if you want to go to it then, but you can also just find it and go inside. And inside a chest in there, there is a machine shop armor set, which includes a helm, a chest piece, and the legs. The chest piece and the legs you will out-level. But what is very good, and you will likely be using until the end of the game purely because of the bonus, is the machine shop helmet, which is on screen, which you can see gives us +1 to mechanics. Combine that with the toolkit, which you can buy from the car vendor of sorts. He sells parts for your Kodiak tank looking thing. You can also buy this utility item, which goes in your utility slot, of course, the toolkit, which also gives you +1 to mechanics. In addition to this, there's actually several skill books in the main town here that will give you +1 skill to mechanics. So no joke, on a fresh character, I had level 9 mechanics before I had left the first town at level 6, which is ridiculous. So, if you choose to do that and pick up all of this stuff, you will actually save yourself a lot of skill points on the mechanics skill line tree, and you can put those points into other more fun stuff for your role playing. So just keep that in mind. I wanted to mention it. There is so much stuff in Colorado Springs for the Mechanist to use. Now, for late game armor, I actually recommend the Spectrum Assault stuff because it doesn't have a strength requirement. Because stuff with a strength requirement, we didn't put any points into strength, so we can't really make use of. Spectrum Assault stuff, in my opinion, is the best stuff you can find that isn't unique and also doesn't have a strength requirement. It's very good base, and then you can still modify it like you can any armor to give it more actual armor class, so keep that in mind. And then for a weapon, we are using a shotgun. Now, in-game, I find that the assault shotgun tends to be the best, but I do need to mention that there is a slight variation on the shotguns you can find in-game, that being pump shotguns and auto shotguns. Which sounds simple enough, but those two things actually make the shotgun weapon class extremely unique in terms of weapons. So a lot of them will have different AP costs depending on which one you're using, as well as doing damage ×3, as you can see in the upper right corner here where it says 76 to 113 damage ×3. Some of them will do ×5 with the auto shotguns, so just keep that in mind. But basically just find the most high damage one you can and give it all the mods possible. Personally, I found the assault shotgun towards the end of the game to be the best one, but there are others. For instance, I believe I still have it in my inventory here. Yeah, we have the neutralizer, which does more damage per shot technically, but it only does 1 shot and it does burn damage. And it actually costs less AP to use than my shotgun that I'm using now, if you notice in the upper right corner there. So again, just options. Shotguns are probably one of the most diverse weapons in the game. Find one you like and use it is really the best I can tell you. Again, personal recommendation, go for the pump shotguns and the assault shotgun being the in-game option. Up to that point, just use the best one you can find. And that brings us to the absolute most fun part of this build, which I've said multiple times we'll get to, and that is the deployables. So in this game, with the mechanic skill, you will find deployables is what they call them, but they are items that you can put in your quick slot and then use in combat to summon robots, and I love it. So there's actually quite a few of these. So some of the examples, the basic one is the decoy. So you throw this out for 4 AP, it will summon up a decoy that you can use to, you know, have enemies hit instead of you. We can pick up a disco bot that will assist in combat. It's not bad, but it's not great either. Then we have the saw pup. The saw pup is a robotic dog of sorts that will do decent damage in melee to enemies. We have the ice spike. It deploys an ice spike that inflicts frozen damage to enemies, so it helps if you want to do some elemental damage as opposed to just like regular old physical damage. I used this one the least, I will say that, so take that for what you will. Then we have the 2 variations on the turret, which is the machine turret, which just does basic physical damage. It takes 2 attacks per turn, plus gives, well, all of these do, give the enemies a better target to hit. Then we have our laser turret, which does more damage, but it does energy damage, so just keep that in mind. And then we have technically the best one, depending on how you look at it, because it is a melee robot, but it's called the Slicer Dicer. It costs the most in terms of mechanics. You need 7 to deploy these, as well as costing 5 AP as compared to most of these only costing like 4 or potentially even just 3. So the Slicer Dicers are really good in that they deal more damage than just about anything, but they are melee, so keep that in mind. How does this build play? Like, how are we actually going to use it? Well, it's really simple. You know, like most builds in this game, you're going to be hiding behind cover for the most part because we're going to be using our shotgun. So I'm actually just going to kind of show you in town here what we are going to be doing. Now, we do have to get through Marshal Quan being upset about us trying to kill a few people. Alright, so getting into it now. We have our deployables, of course. Now, as I said, we kind of plan on using these a lot as our, you know, main kind of thing that we throw these out and just kind of do damage with them on their friendly turns. So we have our machine turret, our laser turret, and our slicer dicer. The main thing I want to show you guys is the slicer dicer. The turrets I feel are pretty self-explanatory, and so is the saw pup, but the slicer dicer is fantastic. So we can summon this robot and then he'll take his turn and kill a bunch of stuff. But I do also want to show off our shotgun damage. So you see all of these enemies in front of me. Now, because they're all grouped up, I'm going to do extra damage to them, plus our just high in-game shotgun, plus all of our crit chance. So when we hit, as you can see, I just killed like 6 people with 1 shot. The shotgun itself can be really good in-game to the point where like the robots honestly kind of make it overkill. So just keep that in mind. This will do a ton of damage in-game, plus the slicer dicer as well as all of your turrets that you can deploy just really make this build an absolute blast. We can watch our slicer dicer do some work on people as well. That's pretty much it, guys. So that is the Mechanist build, kind of giving you just a little bit of a preview of how it plays as well. It's just a lot of using our pumped up shotgun damage as well as our mechanical deployables using the mechanics skill. And to be completely honest with you, this is probably the build I have the most fun with overall, just because it's so over the top in its execution with the shotgun blasts and the deployable turrets and the deployable robots. Just a quick aside, again, just to mention the nerd stuff, skill tree tends to go along with this really well because it also has to do with robots and will let you hack enemy robots, so it'll kind of add a layer of depth to it. So again, I really love this build. It's probably the personal favorite that I've come up with so far. So let me know what you guys think of it down in the comment section below. Like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. But honestly, just thank you so much for watching. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.